Karen,
Yes.
what do you get when you cross a Hollywood psychic, an author, and a TV host with a conscious channeler?
Someone I really want to know.
Yeah, you do. You get this week's amazing guest, of course. Now, today we're kicking down the doors of awakening as we dive into the essential guide to spirituality, the truth of love, and the energy of the all.
Mm.
By the time this episode is finished, you're going to know exactly where to turn to for all the answers for your spiritual awakenings. This one is not for the faint of heart, so buckle up and get ready for a new breathtaking episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians. My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Welcome back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And today we're honored, thrilled, and extremely grateful to welcome back one of my favorite guests ever. She's a certified mindfulness meditation teacher, as well as an author, a speaker, and a TV host. Now, she's also able to use and translate words and dialogue coming directly from source, or as her books describe it, the all. And she's created 4 books on spiritual laws and principles using that channeled voice inside of her. And we'll talk about all her books in a bit. But essentially, she's channeled the definitive how-to guide for awakening the truth of love and the energy of the all. And she just so happens to have been the second guest to ever agree to appear on this show. It's way past time we welcome her back. Say hello to Laura Saltman. Laura, such a pleasure to see you again.
Thank you guys for having me back. I was so excited when you asked me to come back because I know I was like one of the early adopters of this podcast, and being psychic, I knew it was going to be a huge success. So, and I also knew being psychic that you were eventually going to have me back on. So I wasn't surprised when you reached out to me, but I was delighted to be back.
Well, I like the term delighted. So thank you for being delighted because we're thrilled to have you. We got a lot to talk about, and we're going to talk about the power of words specifically because of some of the messages that you received. And we'll get into that in a second. But I want to talk to you first about the books. People who listen to the show regularly know that one of my favorite series is Conversations with God. I was an early adopter, for lack of a better word, of one of your books when you first came out, and I read it, and it was very reminiscent of that type. So is this what you're talking about when the books that you wrote, were they channeled in the same vein as Neale Donald Walsch?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember listening to Conversation with God. I actually listened to it on audiobook. And Ed Asner, the amazing, in spirit, Ed Asner, he was the voice of it. And I just really related to it. And I remember distinctly that Neale Donald Walsch said, anybody can have a conversation with God. You just have to actually sit down and have that conversation. And it just struck me that, okay, maybe I'll try it one day. And then years went by. And then finally, when I was at my lowest point, which is what happened to him, he was at his lowest point. I just started having that conversation where I started asking questions. And then to my surprise, I was receiving answers back. And the answers were very different than the way that Laura would answer the question. And I just kept doing it. And I would say it took me about 50 pages worth where I finally realized that I was having this conversation, that I was doing what Neale had done. So I always tell people that my All books, my series, The All, is basically a modern day Conversations with God or a modern day A Course in Miracles. So it's my conversation with the divine, with the energetic spirit that runs through all of us. And when I met you guys back when I first, was working with these books, the way I think about it is changed even from however many years that was. The way I talk about the connection to source is very different. The understanding that I have, and it took me not just my 4 books that are already out in the world, but I've been writing a 5th book, which is where all these words are coming from. That really got me to a place with the recognition and understanding that at the core of who we are, we're having a conversation with the part of us and the part of ourself that is the divine, that is God, that is source, that is all, or whatever word that works best for you to describe that.
I love that. You're in great company with those 2 books.
So when you're saying that you were hearing these messages back, but they sounded different than Laura, how did they sound differently? Were they feelings? Was it actual words like a voice that it was a different voice, or were they just worded differently?
Do you ever go to court and sit in the jury box and there's a court stenographer there and they're just taking down the dictation?
Hmm.
That's what I did. It was like a dictation. There was no stopping or starting. The words just flowed effortlessly onto the page.
Mm,
And if Laura's talking, I say, ah, I have to stop for a minute. I'm always thinking. But these words just kept coming and coming and coming. And every word is perfectly placed the way that each paragraph is designed. I don't write that way. I've always said if I had to write a book and somebody gave me a $10,000 advance, I never would have written it because I'd be like, I don't know how to write a book. But when I sat down and just started like spewing out my life and the questions that I had about the universe and how it operates, the answers just came back like boom, boom, boom again, like a court stenographer. And so
Hmm.
for me, that's how I knew that I had something distinctly unique
mm,
and different from what I was
Hmm.
capable of doing. And I honestly, it wasn't meant to be a book. It was going to be a journal for a while. And then 6 weeks later, I realized maybe I had a book. And then when I got to the end of the first book, I wasn't done. I had a million more freaking questions to ask. And then I wrote another book in 2 months. And then at the end of that one, I still had more questions. And then I wrote another book. And that book came out. And even now, as I'm writing my fifth book, I still have questions. And I think what I've learned is that there's always going to be questions. We will
mm,
Hmm.
always be questioning because we cannot fathom for the life of us at such a deep level that we are more than physical human beings. So we just keep going like round in circles. And so we go back to the same point and back to the same point until eventually you're like, okay, I've heard it enough, I've written it enough, I've seen enough miracles, I've talked to enough people on the other side, I've done these incredible things in the world. There must be something to this. And eventually you kind of get to the point where you stop going 17 steps backward and maybe only go 2 or 3 or 4. I don't know that anybody will ever get to a point where they're 100% so super confident in the journey and what they have and who we are. And I think that's okay because I don't know that we want to be because if we know everything, you guys, then we're not here. We're back in non-physical. Like if you have
Hmm.
all the answers, if you've been listening to the Skeptic Metaphysician and you have all the answers from you guys and you think you are enlightened, then guess what? You're not enlightened, you're still here.
mm.
Then, if you want to be back on the other side, then keep going and then decide for yourself that you know all the answers, because that's when you'll end up going back to non physical. So, if we want to stay rooted in our physical reality, keep questioning because that's part of the journey.
Yeah. So to put this in metaphysical terms, I mean, the term that they used to use for this type of writing is automatic writing, right? You just
Yes.
kind of just sit down and just write, you're not thinking, you're just letting the words go through you,
Right. Or channeling. That's another word that people use channeling.
right? So you channel the words. Now, did you go back and edit the book at all, or did you just write it stream of consciousness?
Totally stream of consciousness. I never changed a single word. When I sent it to the copy editor, I said to the copy editor, do not change any words. You can change things that were grammatically wrong. You can question something that maybe I didn't hear it properly and make sure it was correct. You can put, parentheses and anything that needed to be fixed when it came to grammar, we fixed and changed.
Yeah.
Everything else is exactly word for word. And we're now talking 5 books of word for word dictation. And if you look at A Course in Miracles was a word for word dictation as well. And that book is what? 1,000 or so
Yeah,
pages.
way
And
too
not
many.
only that, you guys, it's not just my books that I have and the books that I've written. I channel quotes every single day. And I have been for coming up on 5 years. So what I
Wow.
do is every morning when I get up, I sit at my computer and then I ask a question and then the words just come out. And then that became last year I started not only channeling that quote, but now I channel numerology. So I get the numerology of the day and I find something about the numerology to talk about. So
Wow.
like words are just coming and coming and coming all day long within me. And I want to say about the word channeling because I love to switch everybody out of it being that you're channeling it into the word we're sourcing. So that means that at the core of who we are at the core of who we are all the same, right? We're one with that source. So when we are channeling, we are just sourcing through words. So we are becoming the aspect, the part of ourself that is the divine and physical body, and then the words come through. So everything's channeled in a sense, because poetry, music, movies, TV show, books, all of that is us sourcing. Now, some of it's coming from fear, and a lot of it's coming from the divine. It's coming from the aspect of ourself that is love. So all day long, every day, we are all sourcing
Mm,
as the divine,
as opposed to outsourcing.
Well,
outsourcing, right?
it's so interesting because you're talking about just the volume of the words kept coming and coming, and it's kind of the same thing you hear about, Edgar Casey. I mean, he luckily had someone writing it, so he was just speaking, but it's like volumes and volumes. And I don't know, I guess maybe just once you connect, there's so much that it's just like a funnel just coming through.
Infinite. It's infinite. I could be here for another 50 years and I could probably write 10, 12 more books, because
Hmm.
the information will just start to flow through. But at the core, now what I've realized is going back through it, and even going back through my quotes as I'm creating a journal from some of my old quotes, I realize that at the core of every single thing you're channeling, it really is the same thing said in 15,000 different ways. So
Mm,
at the core, I think it's actually very simple to understand who we are and why we're here, and what the rules of this universe are, and the laws that we and principles that we live under collectively and individually. It's the hard part is life, because life is always happening to us. There's the minute that you think you've got it all figured out, then life throws you a curveball, and then you got to figure that thing out. So as soon as there's the hiccups, we go right back to questioning it all, and
Hmm.
we get sucked into human life and all the humaning that goes on. And we forget it's that, and I call it the amnesia of the soul. We forget all our spiritual knowledge, and then we're right back to life is hard. This is difficult. And
mm,
that's where I think these words, that I call it the source dictionary, the words we're using. And obviously, I'm an English language speaker. So when I'm translating word, I translate in English. But if you speak Spanish, if you speak Swahili, if you speak French, whatever you speak, you too have access to translate words down to brass tacks. That's what I'll call it. Like, what does it really mean? What does that word, like, what does love really mean? What is the word soul? What does the word question mean? All of these words that we use in modern English every single day, you can break them down into what source would say it is. Like, what does the
Hmm.
universe tell us about a specific word? And that became really interesting to me, because it made me see the world in a completely different light.
oh gosh, oh my God, you're bringing up all these questions in me now, because I do want to touch on these words specifically that have come to you, because we all do. I mean, I feel very seen by what you're saying. Like, we get caught up in our everyday life, and words have incredible power. And a lot of people don't realize how powerful the actual word people use. Like, Karen laughed at me when I said I was no longer going to say good morning, right? Because it has morning in it. And now I say grand rising in it. She still laughs at me every morning when I say that now. But it goes deeper than that, right? You actually sourced these very powerful words. And I want to dive into that a little bit now. How did you come to realize that some of these words that you were sourcing had this kind of power?
So it started when I was channeling all these different quotes, and the word would come through. And within the quotes, a lot of times I'd be channeling that quote through, and then they'd break a word down into something else. And I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. So after a while, I started taking them out of my quotes and just sticking them into a book, like knowing that at some point I felt like a little dictionary was going to come out. And then over time, and I'm thinking like it's probably been at least 2 years, I started, look, I even have the paper. So for people who are watching the video, like, these are all the words. There's hundreds of words that I've written out. And as they come to me, I just start typing them out so that I have them. And just a couple that I think really drive the point home is, one of my favorite words is why. And when I was typing a quote one day, the question came out for why. And then spirit comes through and says, why is what hurts you. I was like, "Oh, don't ask why, because why is what hurts you." And that really like got me at my core, like, because when we're in why, we're out of our divine self. It immediately puts us into separation. And then the other word that goes with that is the word hard. So when you say something is hard, essentially at the core, you are having a repeated dilemma, meaning that we think things are hard because we have this past evidence that something has happened, something bad has happened. And we decide from the past that something in our now is difficult. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, I need to stop drawing from my past to decide for now. So if I say I want to create something, I'm going to create a new book. Immediately I say, oh, it's so hard to create a book. I have just jumped into the pool of the past for that decision. Because if I knew nothing, if I was only in the moment of now where we know absolutely nothing, I wouldn't think it was hard. I would have no idea. I'd just be like, I am going to create a book. Okay. And then from there, I would start to figure out how to create that book. So those
Hmm.
two words, if that's all you get out of this conversation today, not to use the word hard and not to ask why, then you're going to be doing better tomorrow.
Because you are living in the past and not in the now, like Eckhart Tolle's talked
Right.
about back then. Yeah,
Exactly.
that makes
Yes.
perfect sense. And I saw what you did with the HARD. I caught on to it. Don't think I didn't. You also mentioned something about specific words like illnesses, for example, like cancer and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, should we not be using those terms, or what's the deal?
No, it's not that you can't use them. It's that every word has, I'm going to say, clues within it as to what is actually going on and how do we manifest that illness. Because I believe, and this is in A Course in Miracles, and this is in Neil Donald Walsh's book, and Louise Hay was a pioneer in this. And I truly have learned to believe that all illnesses begin at the point of mind. So what we're thinking and believing based upon the life that we've lived from the moment we took our first breath on earth, as well as what I call your pre-consciousness, meaning things that happen in other lives, so which we deemed as past lives, right? I call it pre-consciousness. So
Mhm.
there's things that happen in your pre-conscious state that may be impacting your life and may be impacting your physical reality. Or there's something that at a pre-conscious level you decided for that was going to happen to you in your physical body in order for you to grow and evolve from it. So different words can give us little clues. So just a couple of them that I actually channeled recently was the word lupus. So we know that many people have lupus. And when I say spirit, it's basically the way I translate that is it's me becoming the divine. So it's Laura's speaking as spirit, where I tapped into the universal consciousness, the love consciousness, the only mind that exists to bring these words through. And lupus broke down to letting unconscious priorities usurp soul. And I thought that is so interesting because what that tells me is that lupus at its core is about us being consciously busy, busy, busy. We prioritize everything else and everybody else over our health, our happiness, where we want to go in the world. And I just thought that was really interesting because I know some people who have had lupus. And when I look back at their life, I thought, oh my God, that really does make sense. These were people that were like hustle, 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 gotta do, I gotta do, I gotta do. And they would put aside everything else that they want to do for themselves, either to serve somebody else or to serve their agenda. Like they had this big agenda. And then the other one that kind of is related to is the word lung. And I loved when it was broken down into learning unconditionally nothing good. It's not that. That's really funny because at the core, our lungs are really the breath of life. And so when we're seeing the world through the lens of anger, fear, frustration, rage, animosity, comparison, all of these things, we're impacting our lungs. And that's where our stress is, right? We get stress and anxiety right in our lungs. So it's telling us like, okay, I need to take a breath. I need to be joyful and happy with my life and not be so anxious and angry all the time. And then from there, my lungs can start to clear up and I can start to breathe better in the world.
It's interesting that you are taking a word that, like you said, it's breath, it's life, it's what keeps us alive, and you got some messages that I mean, they kind of skew towards, I don't want to say negative, but it's not a positive image, right? To having what you just mentioned, uh, w- because we're about to dive into all kinds of things. I want to take a break early. I don't want to break in the conversation when we are in the heat of it, but when we come back, we're going to dive into some other words that maybe we should be using and why. All that and a lot more when we come back. Welcome back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians. We are talking to Laura Saltman, who, like Neil Donald Walsh and Louise Hay and Edgar Casey and a bunch of other people, was able to source, not channel, but source words that give us kind of a play-by-play guide of our spiritual awakening and how we're supposed to live overall. And we were talking about the power of words. Right before we left, we had discussed a couple of words that were things that maybe we want to refocus our language, the way we use those words. So my question going into the break was, Laura, a lot of the words that you have brought up have negative connotations, but there have to be some words that will bring positive connotations to the conversation, right? Let's dive into some of those.
Of course. Well, I mean, the word that comes to mind immediately is the word love. So when you break down the word love, it becomes lifting our vibrational energy. So
Ooh, I love
as soon as
that.
we shift into love, we are raising our vibration. And that's how we lift ourselves out of the chaos of the mind, is by raising that vibration, by coming back to love. So everything is, and when words do get broken down, most of that is to bring us back to love. Because what I've learned through my books is this idea that we are here on the planet of Earth. We've chosen to come here in order to learn about love through the lens of fear, which means that everything that happens and occurs here on Earth is to get us to be reminded that we are meant to love, that we are meant to be kind and compassionate and loving to one another. And whatever is showing up in our life that is fear, and fear can be broken down into all sorts of subsets of emotions, is basically us in separation from that love of which we are. So as soon as you come back to that notion of love, as soon as you raise that vibration, then you start to kind of get like the information and the downloads about, how can I move that fear out? How can this situation help me in my life? How can I start to discover that I am love? How can I be more compassionate? And I know for me, you guys, that by doing the work every single day for the last 10 years, I have changed at the core who I am. And I always like to tell people, I probably told you in the last show, so you can always go back to refer to it. I said in high school, I was voted the biggest complainer. That was like number one. Laura got a little certificate that says biggest complainer, because I complained about everything. And I was always comparing myself, and my self-esteem was so low, and I was so hard on myself all the time. And since I've been doing this work over the last 10 years, I am the most compassionate, empathetic, understanding person. I look at things through the lens of source. I try to see things differently. I try to look for the lessons in everything. I want to help people. I want to guide people. I don't want to judge people. I want to try my best not to judge people, although sometimes the human does come out. And I've noticed that the more consistent I am, the faster and quicker I change, and the faster and quicker I shift when things are going on. And I've even seen that change, because 5 years ago, the way I was reacting in the world was different. And so my healing time took a lot longer. But now I'm so hyper focused when things go awry, to looking at the lesson within it, to coming back to the knowledge that I am a spiritual being having a human experience, and I am connected to the divine. It runs through me, and I have access all the time, all, using that word, all the time, to that information, and I use it. And if we just start using that information more and more, you're going to find that you change at the core of who you are, and who you were 5 months ago will be different than who you were, just by saying yes every day to showing up for yourself.
Something that has kind of popped into my mind as you've been speaking, and I'm hoping
Oh,
you'll
you were
it's
sourcing it through, Karen?
well, I'm not sure.
I would
No.
not be surprised, actually.
No, so if our consciousness is divine and this incredible, perfect spiritual being, why would we need to come here to learn any lessons? What could this little tiny earth teach this already perfect spiritual being?
Well, I'll tell you that what I've, sourced through in my books, and that is, so when we are in our consciousness, right? When we're in our non-physical,
Hmm.
and we are in that state of being, imagine if every day of your life was perfect and nothing ever went wrong, and it was just magical, and glitter farts and sunshine rainbows all the time. Don't you think that would get a little bit monotonous and boring at some point?
Wait, did you just say
So
glitter farts?
I did glitter farts and sentient rainbows.
I have to call that out because I think that's the first time we've ever heard the term glitter farts on the show. So
Well, I like to give credit where credit is due, and I heard it from somebody on Clubhouse one time, and it made me laugh. So I don't want you to think that
That's
I
from
just,
trolls, isn't it?
right.
From troll?
No, actually, it was somebody who was like a spiritual person, and we were making a joke about
Mhm.
something similar. So I just thought it was funny.
well, whatever it is, I'd much rather glitter than the alternative.
Oh my
I mean,
goodness,
if you're gonna
yeah.
fart, right? Let's fart
Woo-hoo.
glitter.
Exactly. It comes down to, listen, like this journey that we are on, as sometimes horrible and tragic that it seems, is meant to be fun. Like, it's meant to be fun because when you're in non-physical and you are just that consciousness, you're not able to eat. You can't like hug. You can't have intimacy with anybody. And so why not go into physical bodies to have physical experiences? So we're here on earth and other places to have those physical experiences because at the core of who we are, we chose to be here. And in our spiritual mind, it actually is fun. It is just our human mind that cannot comprehend that all the chaos and crap that goes on earth can be fun when we see so many horrible things here. But as soon as we cross to the non physical and we get close enough back to that truth, you're going to look back and go, oh my God, I totally get it. It's kind of like, and Neil Donald Walsh talked about this in Course in Miracles. It's like a video game. So you're trying to you're inside the video game and you're playing different levels. And like in the first couple of levels, it's kind of easy and you eventually figure it out. And then you get to the top levels and there's more tools and there's more things coming at you. And it's all like, it could take you a year, 2 years to get to those upper levels. And then eventually when the game is over, you either keep going or you start over again. And so what happens is in our non-physical, it's the same thing. It's like, once you get through the game, you get to decide if you want to go play it again and how you felt about it. And it was fun. So if you can start to look at it like life is just a game and we're playing it, and these are just the levels that I'm getting through, it would give you a very different perspective. For me, it's much easier because I am a medium. And so I talk to people on the other side like every day of my life. And so I hear proof from people on the other side of what I'm talking about. Because some days you look at shit that goes on this planet and you're just like, there is no freaking way. And sometimes even in my books, I ask questions like I get mad. I'm like, this is freaking bullshit. Like, who set up this system? This system is absolute crap. Like, you see something horrible happen to somebody, or you see someone's, child get injured or pass away. And then you're like, why? Like, why? Why would God, the universe, source, the all, want us all miserable and pissed off? And the answer will always come back to the same thing, which is when you cross into non-physical, when you discover that you are truly a divine being, that you are not just that physical body, it's all going to make sense to you. And you'd be surprised how many times you will say yes to coming back to Earth. Because once you've realized it was a game and now you get to play it over, you're just going to go, oh, okay, I'm going to do that. I will do it. I mean, I can't imagine. I keep saying when I'm done with Earth, I'm done with Earth. Like, I am never coming back here. And spirit always pops in to say, well, we'll see when you get here. Like, we'll see how you feel because you're losing the human part of yourself. And when you come back to your non-physical and your spiritual part of yourself, you're going to have a whole different experience with it. It's just going to look different to you. We cannot comprehend as a human right now.
It's such like a contradiction, like a grass is greener sort of thing. Like the spirit wants to come have an experience, but we want to get the hell out. It's like, it's better over there. No, it's better over there. No, it's better.
Right.
Right.
Now, going back to the word love for a second, because you mentioned something that struck me and I've got to call it out because Karen, you're here to raise the vibration of the planet. Okay, Laura, you may not know, Karen is all about spreading the love. She's all about that. And I mean, no matter what she does, where she goes, who she sees, she's motivated by love. And that makes perfect sense to me in perspective to what you just said, right? That we're raising everyone's vibrations. So Karen, I knew that's your mission. You're here to raise the vibrations of the planet. So thank you for doing the very hard work that you're doing.
Well, that's all our mission.
But
Right?
it is,
Yeah,
but
it is.
you're shouldering that and taking it up forward like a good soldier. So thank you for that.
Well, I have some other ways to break down love because sometimes words can get broken down into different things. And this one I really love, which is love is life's only vibration, everyone. Like love is really the only vibration that exists. All the fear stuff, and I know you've heard this on Skeptic Metaphysicians, that fear is false. It's not real. It's not really happening to us. So really only what is love is real and true. And all that other stuff is just like not, it's just an illusion, that word. I don't like that word illusion, but
It's a
it's so,
construct.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a construct. It goes right along the line with, Michael Singer talking about surrendering and letting go. And
Yeah.
why would you let anything bother you when you look at, you take into perspective the fact we're a speck on an infinite universe on this rotating planet in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
When taken into the scope of that, our troubles are literally nothing. So
Yep.
maintaining yourself in the vibration of love and light and joy makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Joy, journey of you.
I like that. I
Right?
like
Joy is
that.
the journey of you.
Yeah.
One of my favorite words, actually, I just channeled it out recently, is actually the word question. So, question is the way to get out of your stuckness. When you question, you shift into an asking, right? So we live on this planet that is in this universe too. So it's not just Earth, it's also the universe that we're in, is a ask to receive universe. So a question is basically the asking. It's the ticket to get the information. So that's how my books were created. I was able to ask a question and then I received the answer. So when I broke down the word quest, first of all, ION at the core in modern English, it means to go. Like, so when you put ION on anything, it becomes to go. And if you break down ION in spirit language, it's infinitely operating now, right? So you're infinitely operating now when you go somewhere. But question, when you break that down, it becomes quickly uncovering egos separating tactics.
Hmm.
Because that's essentially what's happening here in our physical reality is our ego is there to trip us up, stop us, make us angry, make us frustrated. So the minute that we shift into questioning, we are quickly getting rid of ego, which is trying to separate us from love. So that's why it's important to question. So, and not a why, right? Not a why question. Why is what hurts
Right.
you. But
Right.
like, what are we here for? What is the journey all about? How can I move through this situation more quickly? What do I need to know? Those are the questions that are going to help unseparate you from who you truly are, which at the core is love. That's who we all are. The core of us, from breaking us down to the tiniest molecule, we are the vibration of love. So
Right.
questioning everything is the way to go. And then even the word ask becomes a soul's knowing. So when we ask, we are in a soul's knowing. The soul knows the answer. So when Karen asks a question, she's basically shifting into that aspect of herself that is soul, where she already knows the answer. Because at the soul level, we all know the answers inside of ourselves. It's only our human, our ego, and our fear that trips us up. And so as soon as we come back to love, then we can start to bring the answers through. And that's how we all start sourcing information through, is when we come back to love.
So it wouldn't be us if I didn't ask the nitty question that everybody out there is going to ask
Yes.
inevitably. I used to play this game where you pick a word and you just, what do the letters stand for? It, how is that different to what you're doing? Just so we can level set for the audience.
That's a great question because, there's so many companies that use acronyms. There's
Hmm.
so many coaches, especially like mindset coaches, transformational leaders, mindfulness. There's even things that you can break down in mindfulness that people use. And the mindfulness stuff, I would say, probably is sourced through a little bit. And this is different in that it's that same kind of like, um, what's the word for the court reporters when they're doing the
Stenographer.
dictation. Stenographer. It's that same thing. Like the words just come through as I'm sitting at my computer. I wasn't thinking them up. Like it didn't take me 20 minutes to figure it out. I just happened to be writing out a question and then it just comes to me. So I mean, like I said, I have hundreds of words here and they all just got they came out very, very quickly. Like one of them as I look over is flow. So we always say like to be in flow. So flow is follow love over worry. when you are worrying about something, you're out of flow. So yes, there are people who could sit and they could take any word and come up with it, but that's not how these came to me. These all came to me through channeling. One of my favorites, you guys, is the word news. And I laughed out loud when this came out.
Oh
And that
boy.
is the news standing for nonsense expressed without source, Or, this is the best part of it, nothing energetically worth seeing.
Now that is one I can stand behind for sure.
And I think about that when I turn the news on, that it comes back to me like,
Yeah.
the news is nothing energetically worth seeing.
I
I don't want
love
to give my time to it.
I'm so sorry.
Mhm.
I'm so stealing that. I'm so sorry. I'm telling you right now, I'm totally taking that, especially because that's where I cut my teeth, right? I started in the industry in news.
So
Yeah.
So
it's your fault.
yeah, well, it was a very different experience back then. It is a totally different
Mm.
thing now.
Yeah.
Let's not make this into a political conversation,
Yeah.
but just say both sides. Neither one, nobody is actually giving out news. They're each propagandizing their own way of thinking. But gosh, there's so many different words and directions that I want to go to. Can we, should we be really careful with the words that we're using? Because it sounds like if we're asking why, for example, and you say, words that hurt you,
Right.
if it's unknown to us, if it's subconscious to us, why make these things available to us on a daily basis if we have no knowledge of how they can hurt us?
I think it's well, okay. So you wouldn't leave a child in a room with like knives and scary objects and then walk away and not give them some resources to help, get them out of it. So it's kind of like when we decided for our physical life, and what I channeled in and learned in my books is that there have been existences on Earth before the one that we're currently in, where we didn't have tools and resources, where we didn't have channelers and people who were writing books and shamans and mystics and things like that, like we had thousands of years ago. And what
Ah,
happened is, because this is a planet of fear, we all just killed each other, and the planet was imploding really, really quickly.
kind of like what's
So
happening now then.
eventually, yeah, well, eventually spirit was, collectively as the all, we all decided that if we want Earth to make it a little bit further, we've got to give some clues to you. So we're not left here to our own devices figuring it out without the clues and the resources. So everyone who is awakening, so your podcast is a clue and a resource for people who are on an awakening journey, because that's what they asked for. But in the same vein, there are many, many, many more people on this planet who do not want to be woken up. You can say it to their face and they will look at you like you have 15 heads. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know it. They've chosen the illusion. They've chosen to stay in it. And usually those are people who have some pretty deep lessons to learn. So,
Mm,
so I like where we are right now, where we do have the tools and resources. And as you've seen, the planet is shifting more and more into the understanding of consciousness. And it even speaks back to numerology, which is like in the years of the thousands, we lived in this singular idea, right? That there was this one being now. In the 2000s now, so in that century, we started to learn about that. Oh, wait, that God actually loves us and cares about us and wants us to be together. None of us will be here in the 3000s, but in the 3000s,
I don't know about
you're going
you,
to
but
see.
I'm planning on being
I'll
here.
be back. Well, I'll be
Just
back in a
holding
different
on.
body. Yeah, you might be like you'll be Jerry, and you might be Lucy, and I'll be
No,
Belinda.
I am finding that fountain of youth. I'm telling you right
Okay.
now, St. Augustine, here I come.
Well, maybe somebody will be watching us on this podcast in the year 3010,
Ooh.
and they're going to see how the planet has shifted now from this idea of the singular, where there was a God, and we lived under God's rule, to the duality of there is a connection between us and God, to shifting now more and more into the idea that there is a trifecta, which is that there is this source that we have called God on this planet. That's the universe, whatever your word for it. Then there is that individuality within us. And then we are a collective. And as a collective, we're here to take care of one another. We're still in our duality, which is why we see so much fighting and separation still on our planet. But eventually we will get to it. And then in the 4000s, you're going to see the earth will be a complete, if we don't blow it up by then, but in the 4000s, you'll see how now the curtain has really been lifted, and everybody's understanding at the core that we are all one. Even if we are individualized, we get and understand. And what I know as a medium, and from speaking to spirit on the other side and individual spirits who have crossed over, there are planets that operate on a system of love where everybody is still an individual being at the individualized level, but they recognize and understand at the core of who they are all meant to be loving and kind, and they take care of one another as if they were the same person, even if they're in different bodies.
Oh my God, I
Because
love
this
that.
is the planet of fear, that ain't happening on Earth. It may never happen. It might take thousands and thousands of years. But if we could learn to live in that state of understanding that at the core of who we are all one. So you might be Will and you might be Karen and I might be Laura, but at the core of us individually and collectively, we are the same and we treated each other that way and we didn't fight and argue and do terrible things, then we would live on a completely different planet.
So you're saying that the polygamists have it right.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that because it's just we're all about love. We're supposed to be sharing
No, we're
love with
all
each other.
one.
Oh,
Well,
I
No,
got stuck
like
on the
we're
love.
Not
Laura
at the
Wilka.
core, we are. There's only one thing, and we all come from that one thing. And a lot of us still believe in that separateness from that one thing. So we're still connecting to like the universe has my back. To me, when somebody says the universe has my back, to me, you're still separating yourself because you're in this idea that the universe is separate from you and it's helping you. Instead of getting into the knowledge and understanding that you are the universe in perpetual motion, the universe what runs and works through you. So when you are asking for help, you are connecting to that one thing. I call it the infinite supercomputer, the infinite mind that has all the answers for everything. And if we all realize that that's who we are when I always say brass tacks, and we get down to the nitty gritty of who we are, there's only one thing that is here. And in fact, in A Course in Miracles, it says, you think you have many, many problems, but you only have one, and that is your separation from source. So you think you are a separate entity from the divine, and that's why you live your life the way that you do. But if you come back to love, if you come back to the idea that you too are the universe, that you are source, you are the all, then we would act differently, think differently, create differently, be different, treat each other differently.
Gosh.
I want to live on that planet. Don't you guys want to live on that planet?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be an
Let's
amazing
go.
planet? Like if we could make that happen in this lifetime that we're all
Oh my
living,
gosh.
it would be so cool to be able to live on a planet where everybody was kind to one another, where everybody took care of one another, where money, which is basically just made up, the greed and power and all that comes back to that. It would be amazing, but that's not the journey we signed up for right now on Earth. That is not the journey.
Unless we all group together and say we are going to live this way, and
Right.
conscious communities are popping up all over the place. There's a place in I think it's Italy, right on the mountains of the Swiss Alps, where they are living like that as a community.
And that's the thing, like there is more people that are coming back to love that are understanding that, but there is still so many who have decided for the separation. So that's where we as the awakening people have to give them their grace. Like that's what they chose. They did not want to be awakened. You can't push, force, prod them into understanding it. You can only hold space for them and be an observer, all of that. Because at the end of the day, if we do all as a collective, every single one on this planet, 8 million people on this planet, if we all remembered who we are and stayed there, then we wouldn't actually be here. We would all be back into our non-physical. So that's where it's like, we get to understand, like we chose the illusion. We said yes to this experience. So no matter what the roller coaster is about, let's just enjoy it. So come back to when those hiccups occur, just be like, okay, I chose this. At this level, I chose this. And I know when I get back to my non-physical, I'm going to figure out why. I don't know why right now. We could live so much more happily on this planet.
So you're saying we owe a big debt of thank you to those that are digging their heels in the sand and saying, no, I won't go, because they're keeping us here.
Right, exactly. Because they're keeping us. In fact, what I've written in my books is that at some point on other planets, and this, you guys get this because you guys are the skeptic metaphysicians, but if you say that to other people, they think you're total wackadoo. But
just the
at
word
some
alone, skeptic
point-
metaphysician, makes us feel like people think we're
Right, well, that's
wackadoos.
true. But at other times, there were other planets where there were collectives that did the physical experience, that learned who they are, and then vibrated back to their non-physical. And now those planets are lonely planets. So there was some sort of life on those planets that did exist for whatever time frame. And then eventually, once the collective did get to the sort of the end where they understand who they were, everybody in the collective left. And now we're left with a lonely planet. It is very possible, not in our lifetimes, could be, 3,000s, 4,000s, or it could be that we have to start all over again. But it is possible that Earth could eventually become a lonely planet where we did learn all the lessons that we needed to learn. And then this planet would be, that would be the end of it. And then we'd go somewhere else and we're living on some other planet in some other places. Because at the end of the day, everything's infinite. There's infinite places to be, there's infinite ways to be, there's infinite experiences. And we're only going to truly know and understand when we get back into our non-physical aspect, right? So all of this sounds great and we can try to live this way and we try to embody it as best as we can, but we're not going to know it 100% until we hop back out of these bodies, these little borrowed bodies. So my theory though is like, if we just live, even if like we can at least embody some of it, I really do think that we can change our level of happiness. I think that we can wipe out some diseases that don't need to happen on this planet. I definitely think we can get rid of some of our own issues and ailments if we come back to embodying that part of ourselves. I think that we can all start to discover how we're all connected to people who are in spirit and how we can communicate with people in spirit. And we'll start to realize that we're all truly channels or sourcing information all day, every day. And at least if you get into that knowledge, you can have a much better experience on Earth. And I know because I'm living that experience. And trust me, it's much better than being unhappy and miserable and depressed and anxious and frustrated and comparing yourself and worrying about every wrinkle and worrying about every dollar, all that stuff. That does not sound fun to me.
Yeah, and it sounds like you and I have had a parallel path, let's put it that way, because I've learned the same thing doing this show. I've
Yeah.
learned it's much nicer to live with joy than it is to
Yeah.
live in fear. Laura, I feel like I could talk to you forever. I mean, we haven't even talked about, we started getting to the nitty
Have you seen my list of words? I can't read I'm not. If
Uh,
you're listening, I'll let some of the papers so you can hear how many pages there actually are.
so are you going to put those words somewhere so people can actually access them?
Yes. So I am writing a book. My next book is called I Saw the Signs, and you can too, The Infinite Power Explained. And I will put this. So this is called a source dictionary, and I've been adding words here and there as I write the book. And so when that book eventually comes out next year, so this will, whenever this airs, so 2024, that book will come out, and then you'll have that source dictionary. But if you follow me on social media, I do a lot of videos with these words where I break them down. I'm thinking of doing like a Mr. Rogers style where I'm like, hello, boys and girls. Today's word of the day is play. Prioritizing love always yields. So, you know what I mean? And just explaining what every single word means. So you might see some of that on my social media coming soon
Cool.
too.
Today's show is brought to you by the letter Y.
But not the question. That will separate you.
Right.
Yes.
Awesome. And then on top of everything, all your books you've written, you are still actually, you're a psychic, you're a medium, you help people, you do readings for people, things like that. If someone wanted to reach out to you and get some of these services that you provide, what's the best way for someone to do that?
Yeah, so I do that. I still do one-on-one coaching. I work as a medium. I do Reiki. I'm a Reiki master. I do people call past lives. I try to use the word pre-conscious, going into your pre-conscious life, not your past life, because I try to move people out of the language that people sometimes consider woo-woo. So I help people understand their pre-conscious contracts and some of the things that they're here to learn. So that's all on my website, laurasaltman.com.
All right. Well, we're going to add that link directly to our show notes. All you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to her episode page, and you'll see the links laid in there. Super easy to connect with Laura. One stop shop. Oh my gosh. It is so nice to see you again. It was so nice to talk to you. I hope that it won't be this long till we have you back on the show again, because it's been way too long.
Well, thank you guys. And I just want to say I'm so proud, I guess is the word that I'll use for that, of what you guys have done here and created your own community. And I think it's so necessary for people who do find spirituality, because over the years, you're going to find more and more people will find it. And these podcasts will stand for those people who do come to it and are looking for answers and discovering it through you have so many teachers and healers who come on and have all sorts of different modalities. Like we all kind of have our one thing that speaks to us and calls to us. So it's
Yeah.
really beautiful what you guys have done here.
It's just in the interest of us getting better. It's a very selfish act, actually.
Yeah.
But as we learn, everyone who listens in learns as well. And that's the most rewarding thing of it all is that we are learning along with everybody else. And we're hearing that from other people. So we very much appreciate you saying that because we're very proud of it as well. So thank you. And a huge thank you to you. We know that there are tons of options out there, and having you decide to come along on our journey of discovery with us is an absolute honor for us. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. It's all for now. We will see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysician. Until then, take care.